bankruptcy battle is on. Today's the day that Detroit's creditors start fighting for the city's assets. With $18 billion on the line, how far are they willing to go to get their money back? Here with all the details and how to remobilize the Motor City are Steve Malanga of the Manhattan Institute and Wallace Turbeville of Demos. Thanks to both of you guys for joining us. Steve, let me start with you. I mean, the assets being considered here are really incredible. We're talking about Joe Louis Arena. That's where the Red Wings hockey team play. But Detroit's Institute of Art, they're in theory auctioning off the art or maybe the whole institute. The zoo, how do you put a price tag on the zoo?
Well, this is actually not unprecedented because in another insolvency in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, you remember there were all these artifacts for various museums that had been purchased. And essentially they put that stuff on the marketplace and they're using some of that stuff to help sort of get the city out of its insolvency. It never went into bankruptcy court or got kicked out of bankruptcy court, but it's not unprecedented. Cities do accumulate things. They do have assets. It sounds a little bit unusual, but they've got a lot of liabilities out there that they've got to take care of.
They have a lot of problems. Wallace, it strikes me you can only sell off all this stuff once. I mean, you can only sell the zoo to a private holder once.
That's first of all, thanks for having me here. Enjoy it being here. Absolutely. The whole idea of municipal bankruptcy and assets is a little bit of a non sequitur. I date all the way back to the Cleveland insolvency where we talked. It was really the first one under the bankruptcy code. Bankruptcies in municipalities are really a cash flow issue, and the asset issue is a bit of a sidelight. So I'm actually more interested in things like cash flow and some of the
Well, they don't have a cash flow. That's the problem. There is no cash flow. So, I mean, that's why this is their option, is to sell off their assets.
Well, they do have cash coming in. And some of the real questions and bigger questions are on the side of things like the interest rate swaps, where they've paid off $1 billion worth of interest rate swaps for $500 million already, and they're going to have another termination payment, perhaps, that's being negotiated now somewhere in the range of $350 million.
So what does that mean?
Well, it means that they did interest rate swaps a while back.
What does it mean to the city, though? I mean, how is that relevant to this discussion?
It's relevant to this discussion because municipalities are cash flow beasts. It's all about cash coming in, cash going out. So their balance sheets and income statements look very different from corporations. So cash flow is king with municipalities.
Steve, will selling off these assets solve the problems? I think Wallace is trying to say it won't.
Oh, well, absolutely not. And you need to understand something here. We are in slightly different territory with places like Stockton and Detroit. If you look at municipal bankruptcies going back to, let's say, things like Orange County, a lot of these were based on financial machinations, okay? But what you have in Detroit and in Stockton is really structural problems that you just can't wave a wand and say goodbye to. And in particular, the bankruptcy judge in Stockton said what you have here is you have a service insolvency, meaning that they're having trouble paying for basic services. That's what Detroit faces too. And that's one of the reasons why Kevin Orr in Detroit, the emergency financial manager, is saying that even the bondholders who are secured, they've got to take a haircut in this. And this is part of the controversy out there.
Right. I mean, part of the controversy is they can't pay any of their debts. And I think that's what we're getting at, is even if they sell off the zoo and even if they sell off the stadium and even if they sell off whatever precious art they have, there is no way to pay their bills. So how do you fix that problem, Steve?
Well, one of the things you do is they are trying to kind of start all over. Dave Bing, the mayor, who is now on his way out, one of the things he was talking about doing is trying to downsize the city. They're basically trying to deliver services to a city that was once 2 million people, but they're now 750,000 people. They need to find a way. For instance, they've been downsizing the school system to right-size it, really. It's a long process. That's why this is not an easy bankruptcy. It's not like Orange County in California, again, to go back to that a couple of years ago.
Wallace, is that the solution?
Long term, of course. But I really want to distinguish bankruptcy, which means that they're out of cash right now, with the long-term solution. The bankruptcy situation that we have right now has a lot to do with financings that they entered into, much like many other cities and counties did around the country, related to pension funds, related to exotic swaps. It has a lot to do with revenue decreases that have come directly as a result of the financial crisis.
So how do you solve that, Wallace?
Well, the way that it's traditionally been solved is the state governments, and this has happened in New York, Ohio, many different states. Traditionally, the state governments work carefully with the cities and counties that have these problems and work through the cash flow crisis to get to a longer-term solution, which is the kind of structural solution that's being discussed.
But what do you mean by work through the cash flow situation? You mean give them money so they can pay their bills day to day?
Well, for one thing, again, going back to the swaps, the cash crunch associated with the swaps is compensation to the banks for projected future profits because the city has lost its credit rating. And the state can be of an assistance there to keep from paying today the long-term potential profits from those swaps and creating a tremendous cash flow crunch right now.
Okay.
So there's cash right now, then the city of Detroit no doubt has long-term
Sounds like a
structural
very
problems.
tough problem to solve. We're not going to do it right now. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Thanks to both of you.